Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the second of our Higher Education webinar series. Today we have got our fantastic director, Rich Alexander, who's going to talk you through cost pressures, potential mergers, and future of the sector. So without further ado, I shall bring Rich onto screen to start the webinar. There is Q&A set up, so do please ask questions as we go, and Rich will pick them up at the end. Thank you very much. Right, Rich, over to you.
Brill. Thanks very much, Dave, and good morning, everyone, and welcome. So let's get straight into this. It is no secret that the UK higher education sector is at a critical tipping point. So for years, universities have been operating in an environment of tightening budgets, increasing costs, and growing uncertainty. But we are now reaching, certainly in our opinion, a moment where financial sustainability is no longer just a concern, it's an existential challenge. The Office for Students has previously warned that 64% of institutions could be running at a deficit by 2026-2027 if student recruitment doesn't improve. And more worryingly, fresh data from 2024 shows that 40% of institutions have already slipped into deficit. And there's at least 3 universities that have publicly indicated serious financial perils. The financial forecasts don't paint a rosier picture either, with the OFS still projecting a potential £3.4 billion net income reduction for the sector by 2026. So if the worst case scenario materializes, we could be looking at over 80% of UK higher education institutions in deficit within the next 3 years. But beyond the headline figures, there are real structural challenges facing the sector. So the University and College Union has warned that funding changes could severely impact almost 50 institutions, raising difficult conversations about institutional viability. So where does that leave us? What happens next? We know institutions are already exploring cost-cutting measures, new revenue streams, and even mergers as a survival tool, strategic survival tool. But how realistic are these options? What does the future of the UK higher education sector actually look like? And that's what we're hoping to unpack, at least to a point, over the next 30 minutes or so. We're just going to briefly explore the financial pressures that are reshaping the landscape in higher education, the growing discussion around mergers, collaborations, and sector consolidation, how institutions can navigate these challenges, certainly without compromising their core mission. And it isn't just an academic discussion today. This, for us, we think is a bit of a reality check. The decisions being made in the coming years will dictate the future of higher education in the UK. So without further ado, let's get started. So I want to start with a very simple but unavoidable truth. University tuition fees in England have been frozen at £9,250 since 2017, and we know there is a slight increase to £9,535 announced for September this year. But while fees have pretty much remained static, inflation certainly has not. So in real terms, that £9,250 is worth less than £7,500 in terms of spending power due to the impact of inflation. So this means institutions are operating with significantly reduced spending power, while costs, staff salaries, energy bills, infrastructure maintenance, licensing, these all continue to rise steeply. So a recent Universities UK report highlighted that the average cost of delivering an undergraduate course now exceeds the income generated from tuition fees. In some subjects, particularly STEM, universities are losing thousands of pounds per student. And with no indication that tuition fees will be adjusted in line with inflation, many institutions are now looking at alternative revenue streams. Higher international student fees, commercial partnerships, and of course, cost-cutting measures. But here's the problem, or a problem. International student numbers are falling, especially from China, largely due to post-Brexit visa restrictions and also increased global competition. The bottom line being, universities cannot rely on tuition fees alone to sustain themselves. So a bit of a structural funding crisis is unfolding. The scale of financial strain in the UK higher education sector is becoming increasingly severe. While some universities still operate with healthy reserves, an alarming number are slipping into deficit faster than expected. In 2020, fewer than 10% of universities were running at a loss, but by 2024, this had quadrupled. And projections, as we've said, suggest that institutions with weaker financial positions will struggle even more in the next 2 years. While some of the larger research-intensive institutions can rely on diversified funding, smaller, specialist, and certainly post-92 universities are disproportionately affected. And many of these institutions serve widening participation students, meaning the impact of financial instability extends beyond university walls. It affects social mobility, regional economies, and workforce pipelines. Many universities are now tapping into financial reserves just to meet operational costs. Some have seen reserves shrink by over 30% over the last 3 years, and that is a trajectory that is simply not sustainable. Another underreported issue is the increased burden of debt. So universities that have invested in new facilities and digital transformation projects are now struggling with rising interest rates. What might have been a manageable level of borrowing 5 years ago is now a growing liability. And this pressure isn't just financial, it's definitely strategic. So universities now face hard choices. Do they cut courses, services, and staff? Do they seek external partnerships and commercial opportunities? Or do they accept that mergers or restructuring may be the only viable long-term option? I think the next few years will separate those institutions that can adapt from those that may not survive in their current form. And one of the most stark examples we have of financial distress in the sector, certainly recent examples, is the University of East Anglia. UEA posted a massive £74 million deficit in the 2022-2023 financial year, which forced urgent cost-cutting measures. They had to announce significant staff redundancies, with academic and support staff roles being slashed to balance books. And leadership ultimately pointed to chronic underfunding of higher education and the unsustainable reliance on international student fees as key contributors to their financial woes. And we don't think UEA is alone. Their struggles are a microcosm of what's happening across the sector. The difference is that some universities have deeper financial reserves than others, but those reserves won't last forever. The situation at UEA raises a bigger question. Are we reaching a point where mergers or institutional restructuring or even closures become the only viable options? So the financial challenges facing UK universities are now impossible to ignore. Without major intervention, whether from government, private sector investment, or structural reform, the long-term viability of many institutions is in doubt. So we've asked what's next. Some universities will adapt. We think some may merge. And I think sadly some may ultimately disappear. But I think the bigger question is, how does the sector take control of its own future before these decisions are made for them? So I think we are at a stage where the conversation around mergers and alliances isn't just theoretical anymore. It is becoming, for certain institutions, a strategic necessity. These financial pressures are no longer just a matter of tightening budgets. As we said at the start, they are existential threats. So just a few months ago, Cardiff University announced that it would be cutting 10% of its academic staff. And this isn't an isolated case. It's part of a wider trend of universities taking drastic measures to stay afloat. The Office for Students is being more direct than ever, with their interim chair, David Bian, making it clear that universities need to start considering mergers. Their chief executive, Susan Lapworth, has also stated that now is the time for bold and transformative action. And that's the reality. Some universities are going to have to think seriously about consolidation if they want to remain sustainable. If done right, mergers can provide financial resilience, streamline operations, and strengthen institutional reputation. They can help universities attract more international students, improve rankings, and ultimately secure their long-term futures. But let's be honest, while mergers do make sense on paper, they are never straightforward. And we know this from experience, both in sector and across numerous other sectors as differentists. They are complex, they are disruptive, and if not handled carefully, can create more problems than they solve. So if mergers are becoming inevitable, why haven't we seen more of them though? And I think one of the biggest barriers at the moment is regulation. So universities, unlike commercial businesses, don't have the same legal flexibility when it comes to mergers. UK competition law is a hurdle. Many institutions worry that if they start having conversations around consolidation, they could be seen as trying to dominate a particular region or restrict student choice. And that's a gray area that many leadership teams don't want to get caught in. There's also a fundamental difference between universities and other sectors. So in industries like healthcare or banking, mergers often lead to increased profitability or effectively delivering care at a lower cost to a wider patient base. But in higher education, these mergers are more about survival than growth. There's no immediate financial incentive for institutions to consolidate, which often means that unless they're forced into it, many universities will continue to hold out for as long as possible. And I think one that's quite important is also the issue of identity. So universities aren't just businesses. Very often, if not always, they are cultural and academic institutions with decades, sometimes centuries of legacy. And merging two universities isn't like merging two companies. It's about combining histories, values, and academic cultures. And I think that's why so many institutions do and will continue to hesitate. No university wants to be seen as the one that disappeared into a merger. But that said, we do have examples of mergers that have been handled well. One of the biggest successes in the UK was the 2004 merger that created the modern University of Manchester. It worked because it had strong governance, a phased integration, and a very clear vision. The problem is not every university has the luxury of time to execute a merger that carefully. So if regulatory hurdles and cultural resistance are making these mergers difficult, what happens when institutions do take the leap? What are the risks and where are the opportunities? And the reality is that mergers are risky. So firstly, there's the technical side of things. Many universities, certainly many of the universities that we work with, are still dealing with outdated IT systems, and merging two completely different digital infrastructures can and often is a logistical nightmare. So again, without proper planning, these institutions can end up with more inefficiencies rather than fewer. Then there's the cultural side. Staff and students often resist change, especially when they feel like their institution is being taken over. So if leadership doesn't manage that transition really carefully, it can lead to disengagement, staff departures, and even a decline in student applications. And of course, there's the financial risk as well. So mergers are supposed to save money in the long run, but in the short term, they often come with very explicit and sometimes hidden costs. So bringing together two different payroll systems, renegotiating supplier contracts, aligning administrative functions. It all adds up. If these costs aren't accounted for early on, the financial benefits of a merger can take years to materialize. But I think despite these risks, there are huge opportunities if universities take the right approach. One of the biggest success factors is workforce transformation. Too often, mergers are associated with job cuts, and that doesn't have to be the case. Instead of simply reducing headcount, we think universities should focus on reskilling and redeploying staff into more value-added roles. And the restructuring of University of Wales is a really good example of how this can be done effectively. By shifting staff into roles that supported digitalization and automation, they managed to improve efficiency while keeping the vast majority of their institutional knowledge intact. And I think another key area is preserving community benefits. Universities are more than just academic institutions. They're economic anchors for their local areas. So cities like Sheffield, where Differentius are based, and Nottingham have entire economies that revolve around their student populations. So mergers shouldn't just be about streamlining operations. They should also look at how to maintain or even enhance the university's role within the local community. The Abertay Dundee merger in the 90s managed to do this really well, centralizing all their administrative functions, but keeping very distinct community roles intact. And finally, there's international appeal. A well-executed merger can improve global rankings, making the institution more attractive to international students. And our example here is the University of Paris-Saclay, which is a great example. It jumped into the top 20 of the QS rankings after consolidating several institutions. And in the UK, where international students contribute more than 23% of total university income, this kind of reputational boost can make a real financial difference. So far, we've talked about financial challenges facing UK universities and the growing conversation around mergers and alliances. But what about those institutions that don't necessarily want to merge or have a very long roadmap towards mergers? What are the strategies that can help them retain competitive and financially or be financially viable in this landscape? So the three areas I want to quickly explore are international expansion, digital transformation, and other government initiatives. Because these we think are the levers that universities are pulling right now to secure their futures. But are they enough? And what can we learn from those already making some of these bold moves? For example, University of Southampton. So one of the biggest trends we are seeing is universities looking beyond UK shores to expand their student base and diversify revenue. International students have always been a vital part of the financial model. They pay significantly higher fees, and in many cases, they help plug the gaps left by domestic tuition fee shortfalls. But now universities aren't just trying to attract international students to the UK, they're going out and setting up shop in other countries. Southampton, they recently announced the opening of a new campus in India, recognizing that some of the most promising student recruitment markets are no longer in Europe, but in South and East Asia. And this isn't just about attracting students, it's about embedding the institution in these high growth regions where demand for higher education is booming. And this kind of expansion allows universities to increase their brand presence globally, create partnerships with local industries, and that helps ensure a steady pipeline of students, especially as the competition for international students within the UK intensifies. And another great example is Imperial College London. In 2021, Imperial secured funding from the UK's touring scheme to broaden opportunities for international student experiences. And this investment led to the launch of the STEM Global Opportunities Programme, and that has had marked improvements in enriching global perspective of its student body. But again, let's be clear, this isn't an easy strategy. Setting up an overseas campus comes with huge operational, financial, and reputational risks. So governance structures need to be put in place. Local regulations must be adhered to, and universities have to ensure that the quality of education remains consistent. A poorly executed international expansion could do more harm than good. And I think the challenge is whether universities can move quickly enough to capitalize on these opportunities before global competitors from the US and the likes of Canada and Australia do. If there's another thing that we've learned over the last few years, it's that universities that embrace digital transformation are the ones that can adapt the fastest. So as we've said, we have many institutions, work with many institutions that are still burdened by legacy IT systems. They are struggling with fragmented student services and dealing with inefficient back office processes. And that's a problem when budgets are tight. Digital transformation is no longer about modernizing systems. It's about making universities more financially sustainable. Another good example, again, from the University of Southampton. So alongside their international expansion, they've invested heavily in AI-driven administration and RPA. And these aren't just buzzwords within Southampton. These technologies are already cutting costs and reducing administrative workloads. So it's worth thinking about just how much time do university staff spend processing things like applications or handling student inquiries, certainly basic student inquiries, doing manual timetable management. So if these processes can go through the right process of discovery and be automated, that frees up time and resources for more strategic work. A recent JISC report actually estimates that AI-driven administration could save UK universities up to £2 billion annually by 2030. But digital transformation isn't just about cost savings. It is also about attracting and retaining students. I think we'll all know that today's students expect seamless digital-first experiences. They want self-service portals. They want instant access to learning materials. They want personalized support, probably through things like AI-powered chatbots. And universities that can't offer this will struggle to compete with those that can. Imperial College London has already embarked on an institution-wide transformation of teaching methodologies. And that's grounded in evidence that innovative teaching techniques lead to more effective learning outcomes. And this initiative not only enhances student engagement, but it is also fostering a stronger sense of community within the college. And it's all backed up by a robust framework of service design. So we think one of the biggest mistakes universities make when embarking on digital transformation is assuming that technology alone is the solution. The reality is, without good service design, even the best technology will fail to deliver real impact. Imperial is a fantastic example of a university that has taken service design-led approach to transformation. So instead of simply digitizing old processes, they've spent the time redesigning their services from the ground up, ensuring that both staff and student experience genuine improvements, not just technological change. So take their transformation of teaching methodologies. The traditional lecture-based model wasn't engaging students as effectively as it could. And then rather than just adding digital tools to the mix, Imperial redesigned the entire learning experience, introducing more interactive and blended learning approaches. So this wasn't just about the technology. It was about rethinking how education within Imperial was delivered. They started by asking, what do students actually need from their learning experience? Where do pain points exist in the student journey? And how can we design digital and in-person touch points to complement each other? So through co-design workshops with students, staff, academics, and truth be told, differentists, they identified key challenges and redesigned their approach accordingly. This service design thinking ensured that technology was implemented where it added real value, rather than just layering digital tools on top of outdated methods. But it didn't stop at teaching. Imperial are also using service design to improve student support services. Instead of students having to navigate multiple disconnected systems for things like enrollment, timetables, academic support, career advice, they are streamlining the whole experience by creating a single, more cohesive, student-centered digital ecosystem centered around their Imperial 360 product. And this approach aligns perfectly with what we see across other sectors. Organizations that thrive in digital transformation don't just automate old processes. They've always looked to redesign them for better user experience. And for universities looking to cut costs, improve student retention, enhance operational efficiencies, I think the real takeaway is that technology alone is definitely not enough. The institutions must start applying service design principles to reimagine how they deliver value. So while universities are being asked to innovate and transform, there is another player in this discussion, and that is the UK government. And right now, many institutions are wondering, is government policy helping or hindering their ability to survive? There have been several recent policy shifts aimed at addressing financial challenges in the sector, but many, if not all, will argue that they don't go far enough. So, for instance, there has been some discussion around reforming tuition fees, but the government is very reluctant to increase them, and universities are being left to fill the funding gaps by themselves. And at the same time, the tightening of international student visa rules post-Brexit has created lots of new recruitment challenges. And universities that relied heavily on EU students have had to pivot towards markets like in India, Nigeria, Malaysia. Again, just reinforcing why many institutions are making some of these bold moves overseas. On the research side, the UK is finally rejoining Horizon Europe, which is the EU's flagship research funding program. And that is a positive step, especially for research-intensive universities. But again, for institutions that rely on tuition fees rather than research grants, it doesn't address the core financial problem. And then there's the question of whether the government will eventually push for university or more university mergers. In lots of other sectors, the government has played an active role in facilitating consolidations. So we ask, should we expect the same in higher education? Or will universities be left to figure this out all on their own? What is clear is that government policy isn't moving as fast as the reality on the ground. And universities can't wait, can't afford to wait for funding reforms. They need to act now to secure their futures. So what we're seeing now is a separation between institutions that are adapting quickly and those that are standing still. Some universities are taking bold steps, expanding internationally, investing in digital transformation, and rethinking how they operate, and others are waiting to see what happens next. And I think the challenge is that waiting is no longer a strategy. The next 5 years will be defined by who's willing to innovate and who simply hopes the crisis will pass. Because if we've learned anything from the last decade in higher education, it's that the sector isn't going back to the way it was. So for universities that embrace change, there are huge opportunities ahead. I guess the only question is who's going to move fast enough to seize them? And of course, how can differentiators help? So we've spent this session exploring some of the big challenges facing UK higher education, the financial pressures, potential mergers, survival strategies, and the need for innovation. And the reality is the institutions that adapt strategically will be the ones that thrive. And we'd like to think we have a part to play to help. So at Differentis, we help universities navigate complex change through strategic intelligent transformation. And that's not just a buzzword for us. It's a very structured and proven approach to driving real sustainable impact. And what does it mean in practice? So firstly, it means data-driven decisions. Too often, institutions will make critical strategic choices without the right insight. And we help institutions build very clear, actionable data models that guide everything from financial sustainability to student experience improvements. And whether it's optimizing estate usage or tracking enrollment trends, forecasting budget scenarios, a lot of our work here helps ensures that all institutions will be making informed and evidence-based decisions. And again, we work and focus on things like prioritization frameworks. So we know universities face competing demands for investment, digital transformation, international expansion, keeping the lights on, estates moves, student requirements, and we work with leadership teams to cut through the noise and help prioritize the initiatives that actually deliver real value. So instead of spreading resources too thin, we help universities focus on what they will need to actually drive forward financial resilience and long-term success. And then there's process discovery. Many institutions still struggle with legacy inefficiencies and outdated workflows, operational bottlenecks. So we take a service-led approach to process discovery, again, ensuring that the digital transformation doesn't just automate bad processes, but actually rethinks how your institution operates. And oftentimes by uncovering inefficiencies, we can help cut costs, certainly help improve student services, and hope to make your university more agile. And another key focus is that operational and technological resilience. We've stated that the future of the higher education sector will be shaped by institutions that can scale, adapt, and withstand the financial and technological disruption. And our work ensures that you will have the right strategies, cybersecurity frameworks, business continuity plans in place, certainly not to survive, but we hope to thrive. And lastly, service design is at the heart of everything we do. So whether it's improving student experiences, transforming administration, reimagining of digital learning environments, our approach is always student-centered and outcome-focused, because technology alone, we know, is definitely not enough. It definitely matters how services are designed to meet the evolving needs of students, staff, and stakeholders. So yeah, in closing, from me, the challenges facing UK universities are definitely significant, but they certainly are not insurmountable. We definitely believe that the institutions that take control of their own transformation, rather than waiting for change to be forced upon them, will be the ones that define the future of the sector. And at Differentis, we hope we can bring our experience, our expertise, and our strategic insight to help you navigate this complexity and emerge stronger.